My 36th birthday was supposed to be a milestone, a day to celebrate with the man I'd loved for 14 years. Instead, my husband, Derek, and his buddies turned it into a cruel joke. They blindfolded me, drove me to a barren lot off the highway, and left me standing there, their laughter echoing as they sped away. I didn't go home. By the time they filed a missing person report, I was on a flight to Lisbon, Portugal. 3 years later, they saw me on a billionaire's yacht, not as a guest, but as his wife. It all started 5 days before my birthday. I was in our home office, sorting invoices for my freelance accounting clients, when I noticed Derek's laptop open, his email account still logged in. He was meticulous about logging out, so my curiosity got the better of me. My stomach dropped when I saw the subject line from Miranda, so ready for her to be gone. The email thread stretched back 3 years, flirty messages, dinner reservations, photos of them tangled up in hotel rooms. 3 years of lies while I balanced our budget, cooked his favorite pot roast, and believed his excuses about late nights at the office. My hands trembled as I forwarded every email to a secret account I'd set up for emergencies. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper. I'd been his partner, his cheerleader, his wife, and he'd been planning to discard me like an old receipt. The worst part? An email from Miranda gushed about how they'd finally be free once Derek handled me. I sat there, staring at the screen, my coffee growing cold. When had I become so invisible? The question burned, but another truth rose. Above it, I deserved more than this. That night, Derek came home, his tie loosened, his smile as fake as ever. I greeted him with the same kiss I'd given for years, my lips brushing his cheek while my heart screamed. He didn't notice the shift in me. "Big client meeting tomorrow," he said over dinner, avoiding my eyes as he stabbed at his chicken. "Might run late." I nodded, watching the way he swirled his wine. How many client meetings had been nights with Miranda? The lie slid off his tongue so easily, I wondered if he even remembered what honesty felt like. I lay beside him. That night, the hum of the air conditioner drowning out my thoughts. The ceiling seemed to press down, heavy with questions. When had our marriage become a performance? What had I done to deserve this betrayal? But those questions melted into a single, sharp clarity: I wasn't going to let him break me. The next day, I left my desk early, claiming a migraine. Our house sat on a quiet street, the kind with neat lawns and nosy neighbors. I pulled into a side road when I saw Derek's car in our driveway, hours before he should have been home. Creeping through our backyard, I heard voices, Derek's low chuckle, Miranda's giggle, and the slurred banter of his friends, Ryan and Cole. I crouched behind the azaleas, peering through the patio fence. They were sprawled around our wrought iron table, sipping the bourbon I'd bought for our anniversary. "So, the birthday plan's locked?" Ryan asked, grinning. "It's perfect," Derek said, his voice cold. "We blindfold her, drive her to that empty lot off Route 9, and leave her. She'll freak out, come crawling back, and when I ask for a divorce, she won't fight it." Miranda leaned into him, her hand on his thigh. "Then we're done sneaking around," she purred. My heart pounded so loud I thought they'd hear it. This wasn't a prank. It was a plot to shatter me. The laughter from our patio still rang in my ears as I crouched behind the azaleas, my nails digging into my palms. Derek's words echoed: "She'll freak out, come crawling back, and when I ask for a divorce, she won't fight it." Miranda's smug giggle followed, her hand resting on his thigh like she already owned him. Ryan and Cole clinked their bourbon glasses, toasting to my humiliation. "It's foolproof," Cole slurred. "Clara's too soft to push back." Soft. The word stung, but it lit a fire in me. They thought they could break me, but they were wrong. I wasn't going back to that house, to that life, to that version of myself. Not ever. I slipped away from the backyard, my sneakers silent on the grass, and drove to a diner across town. The fluorescent lights buzzed as I sat in a corner booth, nursing a coffee that tasted like regret. My mind raced, piecing together a plan. I'd been Derek's accountant, his homemaker, his shadow for 14 years, but I was also the woman who'd balanced budgets on a shoestring and caught every discrepancy in a ledger. If I could manage his chaos, I could manage my escape. By the time the waitress refilled my mug, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I moved like a ghost through our house. Derek was at work, or so he claimed, probably tangled up with Miranda somewhere. I opened the guest room closet and pulled out an old duffel bag, one he'd never notice. Inside went my essentials, my passport, the sapphire earrings my grandmother left me, a faded photo of my parents laughing at a beach. I rifled through our safe, pulling out my birth certificate and the deed to my old car, things Derek never bothered with. The joint account was trickier. We had $8,000 saved for emergencies. Over 2 days, I withdrew $5,500 in small amounts, 200 here, 300 there, careful not to trigger a bank alert. The cash went into a hollowed-out accounting textbook, a place Derek's lazy eyes would never wander. I spent my lunch breaks at a pawn shop downtown, selling the sapphire earrings and a gold bracelet I'd worn at our wedding. The pawnbroker, a woman with tired eyes, didn't ask questions. "These are worth $2,000, she said, sliding the cash across the counter. I nodded, my throat tight. Those heirlooms were my past, but the money was my future. Back at home, I cooked Derek's favorite chili that night, the kitchen filled with the warm scent of cumin and tomatoes. He ate 2 bowls, praising me like nothing was wrong. "You're too good to me, Elise," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. I forced a laugh, my stomach churning. He had no idea the storm brewing. Inside me, later, I locked myself in the bathroom, the fan humming to cover my call. I booked a taxi to pick me up at the empty lot on Route 9 at 12:15 p.m. the next day, my birthday. The driver hesitated at the location, but an extra $50 sealed the deal. "Be there," I whispered, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. That night, I lay next to Derek, his snores filling the dark. I memorized the cracks in the ceiling, the way the moonlight slanted through the blinds. This was the last time I'd sleep in this bed, the last time I'd pretend to be his wife. Tears pricked my eyes, not for him, but for the woman I'd been, so trusting, so blind. I wiped them away. Tomorrow, I'd be someone else. The morning of my 36th birthday, I woke before dawn. I made Derek's favorite omelet, the kitchen bright with the smell of melting cheese. "Happy birthday, babe," he said, kissing my forehead, his touch cold as a stranger's. "Got a big surprise planned." I smiled, my heart pounding. "Can't wait," I said, and for the first time in days, I meant it. At 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. Ryan and Cole stood on the porch, their grins too wide. "Happy birthday, Elise," Ryan boomed, handing me a small box. Inside was a silk scarf, deep blue and soft as a whisper. My blindfold. "It's perfect," I said, running my fingers over it, my pulse racing. This was it, the beginning of the end. The silk scarf tightened around my eyes as Derek tied the knot, his fingers brushing my neck. "Ready for the best birthday surprise ever," he whispered, his voice dripping with a glee that made my skin crawl. I nodded, letting Ryan and Cole guide me to the car, their hands rough on my arms. The engine hummed, and we drove for 43 minutes, I counted every second, my heart thudding against my ribs. They thought they were leading me to humiliation, but I was steps ahead, my escape already in motion. The car stopped, gravel crunching under the tires. Derek's hand pulled me out, the air thick with the smell of dry grass and diesel fumes. "Here we are," Cole said, his voice barely hiding a laugh. They spun me around, once, twice, 3 times, until I stumbled for effect. Then Derek yanked off the blindfold. The empty lot on Route 9 stretched before me, a desolate patch of cracked earth and tangled weeds, the highway roaring in the distance. No houses, no help, just me and their cruel game. "Surprise," they shouted, doubling over with laughter. I blinked, forcing confusion onto my face. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling just enough. "It's a test," Derek said. His eyes cold despite his smile. "Let's see how resourceful you really are." Ryan dangled my phone, plucked from my purse. "No shortcuts, Elise," I gasped, playing the part. "You're leaving me here? On my birthday?" Cole smirked. "Someone'll drive by eventually." I turned to Derek, my voice breaking. "Please, don't do this." For a split second, he hesitated, a flicker of something like shame crossing his face. Then Ryan clapped his shoulder, and the moment vanished. "Figure it out, Elise," Derek called, climbing into the car. "See you when you get home." The engine roared, dust billowing as they sped away, their laughter fading into the hum of the highway. I stood still until the car was a speck on the horizon. Then I checked my watch, 12:03 p.m. My taxi was due in 12 minutes. I slipped behind a rusted signpost, out of sight from the road, and pulled $700 from the lining of my purse. I swapped my birthday dress for jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap, stuffing the scarf into my bag. At 12:15, a dented yellow taxi pulled up. "Ms. Vaughn," the driver called, squinting at the empty lot. "That's me," I said, sliding into the back. "Downtown pawn shop, please." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. As we drove away, I exhaled, the weight of my old life lifting with every mile. At the pawn shop, Mr. Torres, a man with deep laugh lines, examined my grandmother's sapphire ring. "This is worth 3,500, he said, his voice soft, like he knew I was running from something. "It's more than jewelry to you, isn't it?" I swallowed hard. "Not anymore." He nodded, handing me the cash and a small keychain with a whistle. "For safety," he said. I thanked him, my throat tight, and headed to the bus station. A ticket to New York cost $80. From there, I booked a flight to Lisbon, Portugal, using my maiden name, Elise Vaughn, and a travel agency that didn't ask for much ID. The plane took off at dusk, America shrinking beneath the clouds. I was free, but the fear hit like a wave. What was I doing? Lisbon greeted me with the salty tang of the Tagus River and the clatter of trams. My apartment was a cramped studio above a fish market, the walls stained with time, the bed creaking under my weight. That first night, I sat on the lumpy mattress, my burner phone silent. Derek was probably pacing our house, expecting a tear-streaked Elise to beg for forgiveness. Instead, I was an ocean away, untouchable. The thought thrilled me, then terrified me. I had $4,000, no job, and a handful of Portuguese phrases. Alone in a foreign city, I felt the ghost of my old self whispering doubts. But hadn't I been alone for years, married to a man who saw me as a prop? I opened the window, letting the cool night air sweep in. The river sparkled under the Ponte 25 de Abril's lights, and somewhere, a guitar strummed a mournful Fado tune. My hands stopped shaking. I wasn't just running from Derek, I was running toward something new. The next morning, I taped Portuguese words to the mirror: "Obrigada, bom dia, ajuda." I repeated them until my tongue ached, each syllable a brick in the wall between my past and my future. 2 weeks later, I landed a job as a waitress at a seafood restaurant by the docks. The owner, Anna, didn't care about my broken Portuguese. "You've got a fighter's eyes," she said. And for the first time in years, I believed her. Lisbon's salty air and cobblestone streets became my refuge, but survival wasn't enough. I wanted to build something, to prove I was more than the woman Derek had laughed off at that barren lot. My waitressing job at the seafood restaurant paid the rent, but the long hours wiping tables and dodging drunk tourists left me hollow. I'd been an accountant once, catching every misplaced decimal in a client's books. That Elise was still in me, buried under the hurt, waiting to rise. 3 months into my new life, a regular at the restaurant, a kind-eyed woman named Ines, changed everything. She ran a tech startup focused on travel apps and needed an assistant to organize their finances. "You're quick with numbers," she said, watching me tally tips in my head. "Ever thought about getting back to accounting?" I hesitated, then handed her my sparse resume, listing only my maiden name, Elise Vaughn, and vague administrative experience. She didn't push for details. The startup, Vibe, operated out of a sunlit office overlooking the Tagus River. My desk was a cluttered corner, but it felt like a throne compared to the restaurant's sticky floors. I started as a financial assistant, sorting invoices and tracking expenses. The team was small, a mix of young coders and overworked managers, but they trusted my knack for numbers. My Portuguese was still shaky, so I spent nights scribbling phrases, orçamento, despesa, lucro, and practicing until my accent softened. Each new word felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, the Elise who'd once dreamed of more than balancing Derek's checkbook. 6 months in, I noticed something off while cross-checking a quarterly report. A vendor had double-billed for server costs, a €25,000 error that could have tanked Vibe's funding round. My heart raced as I hesitated at Ines's office door. I was just an assistant, would they even listen? But I knocked, clutching the report. "There's a mistake," I said, pointing to the duplicated invoice. Ines's eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. By the next day, the vendor refunded the overcharge, and Ines called me into a meeting. "You saved us," she said, her smile warm. "We're promoting you to financial analyst. You've got an eye for this." The words hit like a lifeline. For the first time in years, I felt seen. My new role meant digging into budgets, forecasting revenue, and presenting to investors. Numbers had always made sense to me, their patterns a language I could trust when people failed. I absorbed everything: market trends, app monetization, user retention stats. I stayed late, my desk lamp glowing while Lisbon's lights danced on the river outside. Nightmares of Derek still woke me sometimes, his voice sneering, "Figure it out, Elise." But I was figuring it out, brick by brick, building a life he couldn't touch. One spring morning, Ines introduced me to Rafael Costa, a venture capitalist whose investments fueled half of Lisbon's tech scene. He was in his mid-40s, with dark hair flecked with gray and a quiet intensity that filled the room. "Elise will walk you through our projections," Ines said, nodding to me. I stood, my palms sweaty, and presented Viavibe's growth plan. My voice steady despite the weight of his gaze. Rafael asked sharp questions, about churn rates, scalability, competitor risks, and I answered, drawing on reports I'd memorized. When I finished, he leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're not what I expected," he said. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment, but it sparked something in me, a hunger to prove I belonged. Rafael became a regular at Viavibe, funding our expansion and requesting my input on new projects. We spent hours analyzing data, his focus on long-term strategy matching my love for detail. "You see things others miss," he said once, tapping a report I'd flagged for inconsistencies. I brushed it off, but his words lingered. Our work was strictly professional, a rhythm of spreadsheets and coffee-fueled debates, but it was the first time I felt valued for my mind, not my role as someone's wife. By my second year in Lisbon, I'd built a routine: work by day, Portuguese lessons by night, and weekends wandering the Alfama district, where fado singers poured their hearts into every note. I rented a tiny studio with a balcony overlooking the river, my sanctuary filled with second-hand furniture and notebooks of financial models. The fear of Derek finding me faded, replaced by a flicker of ambition. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was growing. Late at night, I'd stand on my balcony, the city's lights reflecting on the water, and imagine a future where I wasn't running from the past but chasing something bigger. For the first time, I believed I could be that woman, the one who didn't just escape but thrived. 2 years in Lisbon had reshaped me. The woman who'd trembled in that empty lot on Route 9 was gone, replaced by Elise Vaughn, financial analyst, fluent enough in Portuguese to banter with coworkers and bold enough to challenge investors' assumptions. My work with Viavibe, the travel tech startup, had become my anchor, and Rafael Costa, the venture capitalist who'd first noticed my knack for numbers, had become a constant presence. Our meetings were all business, crisp reports, sharp debates over market trends, but there was a warmth in his glances, a quiet respect that made me feel like more than just a colleague. I pushed the thought away. My heart was still bruised from Derek's betrayal, and love felt like a risk I wasn't ready to take. It was after a grueling project, a new app launch that tripled Viavibe's user base, that everything changed. Rafael invited the team to celebrate at a cliffside restaurant in Cascais, where the Atlantic crashed against the rocks below. The air smelled of salt and grilled octopus, and fairy lights twinkled above our table. As the team toasted with Vinho Verde, Rafael pulled me aside, his dark eyes catching the glow of the sunset. "You were the backbone of this," he said, his voice low. "Not just the numbers, Elise. Your vision." I laughed, deflecting. "I just crunched the data." He shook his head, stepping closer. "You're more than you let yourself believe." My breath caught. His words stirred something I'd buried: hope, maybe, or the possibility of being seen for who I was, not who I'd been. But fear clawed at me. Derek's lies, his laughter, still echoed in my quiet moments. I mumbled an excuse and rejoined the group, my heart racing. For weeks, I kept Rafael at arm's length, burying myself in work, avoiding his invitations for coffee or late-night strategy sessions. But he was patient, never pushing, his steady presence like a lighthouse in my storm. We'd sit in Viavibe's office, poring over projections, and he'd ask about my favorite Lisbon spots or the fado songs I loved, his questions gentle but deliberate. Slowly, I let my guard down, sharing bits of myself, not the whole story, not yet, but enough to feel alive again. One evening, after a long day finalizing a funding deal, Rafael suggested a walk along the Tagus River. The city was quiet, the water reflecting the golden lights of the Ponte 25 de Abril. We stopped by a stone bench, and he turned to me, his face serious. "Elise, I see you, the woman who rebuilt herself, who doesn't need anyone but chooses who to let in. I'd like to be someone you choose." My throat tightened. I wanted to say yes, to lean into the warmth of his words, but Derek's shadow loomed. "I've been hurt before," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Badly." Raphael nodded, his hand brushing mine. "I'm not him. And I'll wait until you're ready." It took months, but I found my courage. I started saying yes, to dinners at hole-in-the-wall taverns, to weekend drives through the Algarve's golden cliffs, to the idea that I could love again. Raphael was different from Derek in every way, thoughtful, honest, his ambition matched by a quiet kindness. When he proposed, it wasn't with grand gestures but with a simple question on a windy beach in Lagos, the waves roaring behind us. "Will you build a life with me?" he asked, holding a ring of gold etched with delicate waves, imperfect and resilient, like me. We married in a small ceremony on the Algarve coast, just us, Ines, and a handful of friends. The sun sank into the ocean, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. I wore a flowing dress, no veil, my hair loose in the breeze. As Raphael slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt the weight of my past lift. Derek's betrayal, the empty lot. The years of feeling invisible, they'd led me here, to a love that saw me, to a life I'd chosen. Standing on that beach, I wasn't just Raphael's wife. I was Elise Vaughn, whole again, healed by my own hands and open to a future I'd never dared to dream. 3 years after I left Derek in the dust of that empty lot on Route 9, my life in Lisbon felt like a dream I'd fought tooth and nail to earn. I was Elise Costa now, married to Raphael, a financial analyst at Vibe, and a woman who no longer flinched at her own reflection. Our apartment overlooked the Tagus River, its balcony a haven where I'd sip coffee and marvel at how far I'd come. But the past has a way of creeping back, and it arrived one crisp morning in the form of an email on Raphael's laptop. He was reviewing investment proposals when he paused, his brow furrowing. "This is odd," he said, turning the screen toward me. The name hit like a punch: Langston Solutions, a U.S. tech firm seeking funding for European expansion. Derek's company, the one he'd inherited from his father and mismanaged into a slow bleed. My hands went cold. "Langston Solutions," I repeated, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Based in the Midwest?" Raphael nodded. "They're in trouble, over-leveraged, shaky contracts. Are you okay? You look pale." I took a breath, the truth spilling out in a way I hadn't planned. Langston was my married name. Derek Langston was my ex-husband. Raphael's eyes widened, but he stayed quiet, waiting. I told him the bare bones: Derek's betrayal, the birthday prank, my escape to Lisbon. I left out the raw pain, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, but Raphael's hand on mine said he understood. "They want a meeting in New York," he said. "I can decline it." Part of me wanted to let Derek's company sink, to never see his face again. But another part, the one that had rebuilt itself from ashes, needed something else. "No," I said, surprising myself. "Take the meeting. I want to be there. Not for revenge, for closure." The day of the meeting, I stood in our New York hotel room, staring at my reflection. I'd chosen a tailored navy blazer, crisp and commanding, paired with pearl studs Raphael had given me for our first anniversary. My hair was swept into a sleek bun, a far cry from the frazzled ponytail of my old life. "Nervous?" Raphael asked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Ready," I said, meeting his gaze in the mirror. His hand squeezed my shoulder. "You're in control here." At Vibe's Manhattan office, a glass-walled tower with views of the Hudson, I positioned myself at the conference table, my back to the door, a laptop open to Langston Solutions' dismal financials. Derek had run his father's legacy into the ground, debts piling up, contracts falling through. I traced the numbers, my pulse quickening but my hands steady. The door opened, and Raphael's voice greeted them, calm and professional. Then came Derek's, achingly familiar, sending a shiver down my spine. "Thanks for meeting us, Mr. Costa. I'm Derek Langston, and this is my consultant, Paul Weaver." I didn't turn, letting them settle across the table, letting Derek launch into his desperate pitch about global opportunities and temporary cash flow issues. Only then did I look up, my eyes meeting his. The recognition wasn't instant. 3 years had changed me, my posture, my confidence, the way I carried myself. Derek's gaze slid over me, then snapped back, his face draining of color. Elise, he stammered. Elise Costa, I corrected, my voice cool. Lead financial analyst for Vibe. And Raphael's wife. Paul glanced between us, confused, but Derek was frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Raphael steered the meeting forward, questioning their shaky projections, while I slid a report across the table. Your debt-to-asset ratio is unsustainable, I said, my tone clipped. And these European contracts? We'd need signed agreements to consider investing. Derek barely glanced at the paper, his eyes locked on me. You disappeared, he blurted, ignoring the business at hand. We thought you were dead. The police searched for months. I tilted my head, unruffled. That must have been inconvenient. His composure cracked. 3 years, Elise. Not a word. Where did you go? I ignored the question, pointing to the report. Page 5 outlines your cash flow issues. They're significant. When Raphael dismissed Paul to discuss details with our team, Derek and I were left alone with Raphael's quiet presence. Why? Derek asked, his voice raw. I considered silence, but the truth poured out. Because you left me blindfolded in a lot as a prank. Because I heard you and Miranda plotting to get rid of me. Because I deserved better than being your punchline. His face twisted. It was just a joke, I cut in. Don't lie to me again. Then the twist hit. I leaned forward, my voice low. And don't think I missed your little stunt last month, sending an anonymous email to our biggest client, claiming I fudged Vibe's numbers. Derek's eyes widened, caught. I traced it to your IP address, I said. I showed the client our real data, and they doubled their investment. Your sabotage only proved my worth. He slumped, defeated. I came to show myself you have no power over me, I said, standing. Goodbye, Derek. As I walked away, Raphael's hand brushed mine, and I felt the final tether to my past snap. Walking out of that New York meeting, the weight of Derek's betrayal finally fell away, like dust shaken from a long-forgotten coat. I stood on Raphael's yacht months later, the Mediterranean stretching endless before us, its waves glinting under the sun. Lisbon's lights had welcomed me as a fugitive, but this moment, my hand in Raphael's, the salt air kissing my skin, was my victory. I wasn't just Elise Costa, wife of a billionaire. I was Elise Vaughn, the woman who'd clawed her way from a barren lot to a life she'd built, choice by choice. Vibe thrived under my analysis, its apps now guiding travelers across Europe. Raphael and I worked side by side, his vision paired with my precision, turning startups into empires. Our Lisbon apartment, with its riverview balcony, held laughter and late-night talks, a sanctuary Derek's lies could never touch. I thought of him sometimes, not with anger but with a quiet detachment. He'd tried to break me, then sabotage me, but each blow only sharpened my edges. The email he'd sent to ruin me had backfired, cementing my reputation instead. That was the sweetest irony. His cruelty had no power anymore. As the yacht sailed toward the horizon, I leaned against the railing, Raphael's arm around me. Happy? He asked, his voice soft. I smiled, the gold wave-etched ring on my finger catching the light. More than I thought possible. This life, my career, my love, my strength, wasn't a reaction to Derek. It was mine, forged from the ashes of a prank meant to destroy me. Standing there, I knew the truth. I hadn't just survived. I'd become the woman I was always meant to be.